you. I'm so honored to be here. I got heart palpitations coming around that curve and started to remember all the speeding tickets I got when I was a student here. It's fine, I'm fine. I want to begin by, first of all, thanking all of you for being here. Thank you. And, excuse me, I think what we're going to talk about today is so foundational to the idea of being working women who care about our careers very deeply and our homes and families very deeply. No matter the season of life that you're in, whether you're a student or you're a young mother who's out working or your children have left the nest, I think we can all relate to that feeling of being burned out, right? I don't want to give you like 3 big tips to go home and make your life better, but what I want to do is tell you a little bit about how I've fallen on my face. I want to encourage you to throw some chairs, which I'll tell you about in a minute. And I want you to leave here feeling understood. I think a lot of times we have women that will stand up and share their story, and we often look at them and we think, I want to do that. My life is actually really complicated, and her life looks really easy. Anybody? Right? So I really believe that we can live our lives proactively rather than reactively. A lot of times we do what we're supposed to do, right? Our parents told us we went to high school, we graduated, we go to college, we get a degree, maybe we go to grad school, then we get married, we have children. That's just the path we follow. But what if we took a step back from our lives, and instead of me encouraging you to go forward in all of these ways, I encourage you to pause and maybe take a step back. So I hope you're ready to dig a little deep with me today. We're not going to start lighthearted. We're going to start a little deep. I want to tell you about, is it the middle button? No, it's that button. Hello. There we go. That girl. This is Caroline. She's 4. And she is the brightest, bubbliest, happiest little girl I've ever met. We tell her often that she was made out of a rainbow and a little bit of sunshine, and so kind of squished together, and that's what made her. That's what she's made out of. She is so happy and so joyful, and when she tells you that she loves you, she has to put one hand on either side of your face and get like that close, and then she has to squeeze it and squeak out the words. Like there's no other way that she could possibly relay this information. She is such a light. And my hope and prayer is that she forever stays just like that, right? But I turned 36 yesterday, and I have a job, and I have a mortgage, and I have 3 kids, and I have a husband, and I have concerns, and I have worries and responsibilities, and I know that somewhere along the way, I changed from that little girl, that little happy girl, into stressed out, grown-up girl. Anybody? I'm always amazed at how many heads nod when I say that. I believe that no matter where you are in your life, you can pause and you can change course. That you don't have to live your life with your hair on fire. And that you can design a life that can be well lived, that you are worthy of a life like that. I believe that burnout is an absolute epidemic. And on the way here this morning, I just had this thing in me that was like, you gotta read part of your new book. You gotta read part of your new book. And I was like, I can't do that. It's not even edited yet. And also, I would be reading off my phone, but I have to share part of it with you, because as I tried to think of all the different ways to share this first part of this message, I thought I can't do it better than I wrote it the first time. So do you ever wonder when life began to be different? When we went from happy little girls to frenzied women, sometimes moms of happy little girls? Where's that crossover? That line, that time marked by moving one foot from the age of joy and happiness into the age of stress, slowly pulling the other foot along with us. Was it a birthday? Maybe our sweet 16s are the marks on our timelines where we go from those happy girls to these stressed out girls, overwhelmed, and maxed out? Or was it a gradual shift in life and perspective happening over the span of years, life events and change? Somewhere along the way, we went from thriving to surviving. It's a tough thing, being burned out, and it has a lot of different names: overwhelmed, stressed, frazzled, frenzied, frantic, depressed, not in the clinical sense, of course, that's something entirely different. But sometimes it can feel off course. And that can look like a lot of different things, but the concept is still the same. You look at your life and you think, how did I get here? What are we doing over here when I was going to go over there, right? I want to dig into the idea of feeling every day burned out, a feeling or state of being that happens when the enormity of everyday life, when all of our responsibilities and all of our goals lead us to a place we'd never intended to be. These feelings can conjure up a lot of guilt too. Who am I to feel this way, feel off course, when I have my basic needs met and then some? Or who am I to feel this way when I have healthy children, or am cancer-free, or am not dealing with XYZ like my neighbor or friend? I've often shoved this feeling deep down into my heart because of the guilt that comes with acknowledging that it's there. It feels as if by acknowledging that I'm a little bit off course, I am void of any gratitude for any blessings or privileges or treasures in my life. So instead of acknowledging a problem, digging deep, and finding a solution, I turn the other way. Ignore the feelings, unknowingly allowing them to grow, and that leads to what? A literal crash and burn. Our world is so much different than it was even 5 or 10 years ago. My own mom marvels that what the world has added to the plates of young women, of women of all ages, since she was my age. Busier schedules, social media, constant connections through smartphones. Even the internet wasn't around when my mom was my age. The world is dramatically different, and I fear that we have not done enough to prepare women along the way. We as humans were not designed for so much of everything. Rather than a slow leak in our bright yellow balloon of childhood joy, I believe this is what happened to it. Little by little, we added one more puff of air. A child, children, jobs, marriage, church, volunteer projects, social events, social media, phone calls, text messages, Facebook, Instagram, you name it. Household chores, mortgages, soccer practice. Little by little, we added a puff, followed by another puff, followed by another puff. And what happens to that balloon? It either downright pops or exists expanded to its maximum bandwidth, unfathomably fragile to everything around it. This is burnout, a life filled to its brim with commitments, possessions, communications, and connections that is deceivingly full, but soulfully and spiritually empty. Here's the beautiful part. There is life beyond this, and I challenge you to set aside everything you know about pouring out and filling up. Set aside the lies that self-care suffices as a manicure and that the perfect organizer will instantly bring order to your life. I make planners for a living. Becoming the girls we were made to be requires the tedious, difficult work of undoing, unbecoming, and unlearning until we are at our absolute basic self, then rebuilding, replenishing, and refueling our minds, bodies, and souls. Oh, what the world could be. As I drop it. Oh, what the world could be. Thank you. If we were all those girls that we once were. Appreciate it. So I invite you to pump the brakes today, to give yourself the gift of this time. Your children are taken care of, you've left your classes, you've left your jobs and your inboxes, you are here. What a gift you've given yourself to sit in this space, to think, to reflect. I encourage you to take notes, to dig in, to question everything, because you deserve a life well lived. So I have a question for you. How are you? Right? And a couple of you probably just thought, good, right? I'm great. Someone asked me this morning, how are you? Fine. I'm good, thanks. I'm a little stressed. We have a lot going on this week, and I have a little boy we're testing for celiac disease, and I have a lot going on. That's my real answer. What's your real answer? How are you? Really? The first time someone asked me this, I was like, you're crazy. What do you actually mean? But when you sit down and you really think about it, I think a lot of us can admit where we are and acknowledge that sometimes it's okay to change course. So being proactive in designing your life instead of reactive to what happens to you, what's going on, what kind of dramatic things happen during the day, or what kind of problems arise, or what kind of good things happen, when you are able to understand your purpose and your vision, that's when you're able to be totally proactive. Do any of you feel like sometimes you're on a really fast train? Like life is going, it's going well, it's going fast, and you're on this train, and this train's going quickly and quickly and quickly? I believe that that can be a dangerous place to be. When we are on that train and we're just on for the ride, right? It's good. We're going to keep going, keep riding the train, and we don't have time to look around at where we're headed because we have so much going on. But sometimes we're actually headed off a cliff. We're actually headed into a wall. And that's what happened to me. And I'm going to share a little bit about my story and how I hit that wall and then changed course. Those are my kiddos. This is my team here on the upper left. This is my old house where we actually used to ship 10,000 Simplified planners out of our living room. And this was our end cap in Target recently. When I was a student, I was here at West Florida, and I had an existential crisis trying to choose a major. I felt like as I was trying to choose what to study, I was determining how I was going to spend every day for the next however many years. And my mom had been a teacher for 38 years in Escambia County, recently retired. But she always encouraged me, be a teacher. You love children. This is what you should do. Go this path. And the sophomore before my junior year, when I actually, apparently at that point, had to choose, I decided I was just going to follow my gut. It was the first time that I gave myself permission to just take a chance, right? To just do what I really liked. And so I majored in English. I've always loved books, I've always loved writing, and I knew that if I followed, I just had this thing in me that said if I follow that path, if I go that direction, something's going to work out, right? I ended up with a master's degree as well in public administration because nonprofit work and philanthropy have always been really important to me. Got married, moved to Tampa, and actually worked for the University of South Florida Women in Leadership program. And it was a wonderful job, and while I was there, I saw women of all ages doing all sorts of amazing things. And I kept thinking, man, I want to do something like that. And I also kept thinking, looking around at some of the women around me, not just in that role, but just women in the community, and thinking, is this what life is supposed to look like? Working 80, 90 hours a week, stressed out and trying to figure out how to fit kids in and life in, and when do I do my laundry, right? And I said, I think maybe now's the time that I trust my gut again and start learning how to design things. So I used Microsoft Publisher, which any of you who know design are cringing, but it's all I had. And I started designing wedding invitations. And I started a little Etsy shop. Etsy was new at the time. Facebook was the thing. Twitter was kind of cool. There was no Instagram. And started to just put my name out there and share my authentic story of being an entrepreneur, a young wife who did not yet have children. But I was doing this so that when we did have children, I could have flexibility as a mom. Remember those words. Because that was why I got started 10 years ago. So the business really, really took off. It kept going and growing. I eventually left that position to pursue this entire thing full time. And about 5 years later, after I had created the Simplified Planner, It was born out of my own desperation as a mom for some kind of organization and order. I looked around at some of the other women around me and thought, man, they have perfect hair and 6-inch heels and dinner on the table at 6, and like, I'm dying over here. And in my brain, I was the only woman who felt that way. And I just needed a tool to help me organize it. So I went out to all the big stores and looked at all the different planners, and everything I found was super overwhelming. There's all these boxes to check and things to fill out about your budget and how many glasses of water you had, and I basically felt like more of a failure when I did those things. And I decided I needed a planner that was really simple. So using a binder and a Sharpie and some notebook paper, I just mocked up a planner where I could keep track of my schedule and my to-do list and what was for dinner. And the Simplified planner was born. So fast forward about 5 years, we were carried in over 800 stores around the world. I was in Forbes magazine, and I had a team of 8, and we were running a multi-million-dollar company. Sounds great, right? My bio read so good. It sounded awesome. I mean, I was so proud. It was so great. We were doing so well. I had proved to my husband, like, look, I'm not crazy. People still use paper planners today. And it just took off. But that was late 2016. My first book came out. And at the end of 2016, I remember laying in my bed and listening to a book called Present Over Perfect by Shauna Niequist. Please read it, it's so good. And hearing a story about chairs. And these are the chairs I'm gonna challenge you to throw. Not in here. Shauna tells this story about 2 pastors, an older pastor and a younger pastor. And the older pastor was a pastor of a really, well-established, medium-sized, good-hearted church. And the younger pastor was a pastor of a quickly growing, young family, becoming megachurch. And the young pastor said to the older pastor, I don't know how we got this big. We are so stressed out. We are so burned out. I don't know how we got here. It's overwhelming. What do I do? I mean, we're a church, right? So growth is awesome, but also, how do I keep going? And the older pastor said, okay, well, tell me how you did this. And he said, well, we did this program and this program and this program, all the things they say you're supposed to do. And he said, oh, okay, you can claim that. You built that, And he said, no, it just happened to us. It just kept growing and growing. And he said, no, you kept putting out the chairs. And I was like, oh. And my husband, I was crying, and my husband, he ran in the room, what's the matter? And all I could say was, chairs. And he was like, what the chairs? Anyway, so finally, he says to me, you are so burned out. We have 3 children now. You are doing all of this. You are on 48 airplanes this year, and you hate to fly. Something's got to change. What's it going to be? And he's funny. He's such a good guy, and he's actually went to West Florida too. And he says, he's really good at telling me, it's gonna be okay, just keep going. And he's also really good at telling me to just get up and figure it out. So that day, he said, you just gotta figure it out. And it's not something you need to labor over. You know what needs to change. You have to change course. And I did. I said, we have to quit wholesale. And he said, well, that's 40% of your revenue. And I said, I know. And he said, okay, we can cut from 800 stores down to 1, our store, online, and we'll change our lifestyle. And I was like, what do you mean? And he said, we'll just live differently. Do we have to constantly live like this, where life is so frantic? And I was like, no, but I didn't know I could question that. I just thought, you keep going, you keep growing, you keep saying yes, and you just move on. You just figure out how to deal with it. You find balance somehow, right? And we often think balance, you have so many things going on, so how can you fit all the things onto your plate and find balance? And what he was suggesting was, it's not about finding the right rhythm or finding the right tool to manage it. You gotta quit something. So we did. We quit that, and we made one of the biggest, scariest decisions we've ever made. We quit Amazon. I was always told you get on that train or you get run over by it. But we quit Amazon, we quit all the things, and we said, what if we just like when I was in college, what if we just trust your gut and we go back to what you love, which is building community with women online, connecting with women over real struggles they're having, helping women simplify their lives. What if we just did that? And so we did. And not only did we surpass that year's revenue, we grew it by 30%. So all of that to say, changing course is not always a bad thing. The first thing you have to do is decide what actually matters to you. I have it written down and taped on my wall in my office. You started this to be a flexible mom. You know, you have 8 employees now, and you're running a big company, and you're doing all these things and writing books, but like, be at the Halloween party at school. In fact, after this, I have to go to a sock hop. But like, be at the things, because that was what it was all about for you in the beginning. And what I realized after we quit wholesale was that I was being called not to the internet and the world, I was being called back inside the 4 walls of my home. And I had ignored for a while how much that filled me up to keep a home, to make a home, to do those things. So claiming ruthlessly and unapologetically what mattered most to me put me back on track. And it made making the big decision and also all the little decisions that happen along the way a lot easier, a whole lot easier. So I have these 3 steps for you. They're fairly simple, but come with a lot of action. So I'm going to be sharing a lot of action steps that are fairly simple to complete after today. When you're back at your house, I encourage you to get a piece of poster board and a Sharpie. That's what I do. Sometimes if I have a lot of things get out of my head, I need a big piece of paper. When Brian sees it come out, the poster board, he's like, here we go. Define the life you want to have. What does it look like? You know, exactly what does it look like? And get really specific. Eliminate distractions. Sometimes your distractions are actually things you've invited into your life that are good. And we'll talk about each one of these more in detail. And lastly, something I think we do not acknowledge enough, and that is replenishing and refueling ourselves. That's the whole first part of the book I just read to you. That's the whole premise of it. We are so burned out, and we are not taking care of ourselves. If we're constantly pouring out onto other people, what are we doing to fill back up, right? So, why do you do the work you do? Or the work that you're setting out to do, that you're studying? I don't care if you're selling suitcases or financial services or planners or whatever. Why? Why do you get out of bed in the morning to go there? Why do you sacrifice time away from the people you love to go and do that? Your purpose is your roadmap. And for me, as simple as that is, to say, I just wanted to be a flexible mom like my mom was when she was a teacher. She got off work a little early every day, and then she was home for the summers. She had flexibility. That was it for me. And that may not be your answer. You may have, you may want to make $1 million, or you may want a certain accolade, or you may want to contribute a certain way to your community. Whatever your why is, it's so important, no matter what it is. Write it down, tape it on your wall. My dad always says, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, right? And I hope he's proud, because I make planners. But I really believe that if we don't, not just as students, not just as younger women in the early seasons of our lives, but no matter where we are, at certain points, certain seasons, we have to look at the road we're on and say, is this where I want to go, right? Trajectory is everything. Making sure that you're on that right path and having the bravery to change course. And what would your best life look like? This is so fun to do. This is where you get to ask yourself, do I want to work in the morning or do I work at night? And I don't care if you already have an established career. It's okay to do this now, especially with how many different options there are in the workforce today. What kind of hours do I want to work? Do I want to work 3 days a week? Do I want to work 6 days a week? What kind of schedule do I want to have? What kind of income do I need to make to support the lifestyle I want to have for our family? What type of awards or accolades do I want to achieve? What kind of goals do I have for myself and for my family? What does that look like? I think also it's important to just say if there are things that are not working. If you are in a certain place where your hours are just insane, or if your income is high but your time with your family is low, is there something out of whack? Is there something that we can acknowledge and look at that could be changed? I think what's so interesting for myself personally is that my answer never changed. I mean, even when I was on a private airplane traveling with Forbes magazine, it was like, I can't wait to get home to my kids. That's the most important thing to me. And is there a way for me to stop hustling so hard and stop stressing myself out so much so that I can do more of that and still be successful in my career? And that's exactly what we did. Okay, so action steps for that. Figure it out. What is your purpose? Write it down. Write out your vision for your best life. What does that look like? Are there things in your life that are working well or not working at all? Where are those pain points? And are there ways that we can alleviate them? Is there a manager we can go and talk to? Do we need to look at what our major is? Do we need to maybe go back to school to earn another degree, to further our career in a different way? I have a very best friend who has twins as well, and was in a very upwardly mobile career, and recently made the decision to stay home with her twins. And she struggled, struggled like crazy. She knew they were gonna have to change their lifestyles. She knew a lot of things were gonna look different for her. She knew she would go back eventually, but making that decision was like soul-crushing for her, because she knew what she needed to do for herself personally. And I'm so proud of her for saying, this is a season, and maybe where you are now is a season. And we need to go off course just a little bit for a time and come back. And maybe that might not mean being a stay-at-home mom all of a sudden. Maybe it might mean we need to further our education in one way or go this direction. But acknowledging that seasons come and seasons go also gives us permission to make changes. Burnout, what we talked about earlier. It's an absolute, total epidemic. And I hope if you take anything away from today and leave here with one thought in mind, I hope it's that you don't have to live your life constantly burned out. You don't have to live your life constantly stressed. If where you are in your life means that your kids are only seeing tired mommy, something has to change. If where you are in your life means that you are far off course, give yourself permission to do something different. Sometimes that means saying no. And that's scary, right? Sometimes we have to say no to things that are actually good, things that are gonna make us money, or things that are gonna further our career. Sometimes saying no means that we are gonna disappoint somebody. Sometimes saying no means that we're gonna leave something a little bit undone. Sometimes saying no means that we're gonna feel sad about it. But saying no is one of the best gifts you can give yourself as you simplify these things and find your new track. When I said no to those 800 stores, I thought my publisher was gonna absolutely cry. They were like, we gotta get on the phone and talk about this. But we got through it, and I may have had a lot of disappointed retailers who could no longer sell our product, but I had 4 people in my house looking at me really glad that I had made that decision. And looking at the words on my wall, I made the right one. Just remember, when it comes to the people that we have to say no to, they are not your problem. Obviously, there's respectful ways to do that, to say no, to decline things. But for me personally, saying, in this season, I'm maxed out and I cannot, or thank you so much for considering me, but I have to decline, has made me a more powerful woman. And it's changed the course of my business wholeheartedly. I think one of the best things that you can do as you eliminate distractions is to take inventory of your life. To say, what am I committed to? What do I have going on? All of the projects, all of the committees, all of the volunteer things, the room mom stuff, all of the anything that you're involved with. Everything that takes your attention. Writing those things down on your poster board. Writing those things down, getting them all out of your head, and then saying, let's make another list, a yes and no. What am I going to say no to? And what am I going to say yes to? Unapologetically yes. I am going to say unapologetically yes to putting a simplified planner in every woman's hand around the world. I'm going to say yes to encouraging women in an online community where they are talking to me and not just to people who work for me, who are equally amazing. But I'm going to put myself out there. I am going to say yes to getting involved in my local community and speaking at things here and doing things here and serving Pensacola, and I'm going to say no to all those airplanes. I'm going to say no to being room mom. My mom was always room mom, and I wanted to be, but I just can't. I can't in this season. I'm going to be at all the things, but I can't be room mom. Somebody else's gifts and talents are better suited for that. So take inventory of those commitments and create that yes and no list. Think through, again, what's working and what's not working. And give yourself permission to question everything, every single thing on your list. Even if it's an automatic, oh, but I have to. Oh, but I've been doing that forever. Oh, but I would disappoint someone. Give yourself the gift, the permission to say, but do I have to? In this new book, I talk a lot about social media. I took a month off social media in January to write it, and it was the biggest gift I've ever given myself. I didn't quit Instagram even when my kids were born. It's my business. I run my whole thing on there. But giving yourself the gift of questioning that, do I need a Facebook account? Is that a distraction? Do I need an Instagram account? I don't know, do you? A lot of people will say, well, I need these things because I use them for my business, or I need these things because I share pictures with with family members and whatnot. But do you? Question everything. Question all the distractions. You pour out what you put in. I have this concept of sweet water. And what this is we are like wells as women. We are wells full of sweet water that we're going to pour out onto our teams, our kids, our husbands, our spouses, our friends. It's what we pour out onto other people. That's what we love and serve with. So what are you putting in to pour out? Are you putting in overwhelm, burnout, lack of sleep, bad food? If we're putting comparison in, what are we pouring out, right? And how are we taking care of ourselves so that we can be our very best versions of ourselves? Self-care is so important. And a lot of times when we talk about self-care in girlfriend groups, somebody's like, you should just go get a pedicure. And that's great, right? Pedicures are great. But self-care should look like soul rest. Soul rest. Self-care should look like whatever it is that sets your heart on fire and makes you feel full. Full. When was the last time you felt really whole? Maybe it's gardening. Maybe it's cooking. It's not that for me. Maybe it's writing. Maybe it's being with a trusted friend that you can share your heart of hearts with. Maybe it's sleeping. Whatever that is for you, infuse more of that into your life. This is something I added at the last minute. I think it's often left out of these conversations about balance, and that is the magic of home. A lot of times we think of it as our homes as like the place we go back to and feed our kids and go to sleep, right? But there's magic in home. And as you're designing this life, this well-lived life, it cannot be ignored. Home is the place where you refuel, where you are replenished, where you shut the door on that girl you had to be out there, where you take off those heels and you are yourself. Your home has the power to fill you right back up if you allow it to do so. So I'm going to give you just a couple tactical things about home that I think are really, really powerful, and I have put to really good use in my own life just the past couple of years. A lot of times when you walk in your house, do you feel like everything's calling your name? The pile of laundry, the mail that's over there, the kids' homework that's over there, the shoes that somebody didn't put away. There's just so much stuff calling our name, calling for our attention when we get home, and keeping us from doing that part of our lives that many of us love so much, whether we have kids or don't have kids, live with a spouse or live alone. That's where we get to go be us. And clutter, physical clutter, is mental clutter. Physical clutter is mental clutter. So giving yourself the gift of a little bit of time to take a look around your house. You can do a deep purge or just a surface one. It still makes a difference. Collecting the clutter, collecting the distractions, collecting the trash, collecting the donations, the recycling, those jeans that don't fit you, you are fine, just as you are. You do not have to be the weight you were before you had twins. You can be the size you are now. Those feelings you have when you get dressed in the morning carry you. They go throughout your day. They can make you go this direction instead of that direction. Purging, decluttering your house, I think, is one of the most powerful things you can do for your soul. And I think it's also one of the most powerful things you can do for your family. Once you get your home to a place, it doesn't have to be perfectly designed. When you declutter your house, just like you have decluttered your schedule and the distractions in your life, when you do that, you have a clean slate. Don't spend $1, by the way. Don't spend $1 when you do it. You don't need to buy fancy boxes and fancy organizers. If you are looking at your 17 pairs of flip-flops and thinking, I have a problem, I need to do something with this so that getting dressed in the morning is so much easier so I can get to my job on time, your problem is not that you don't have the perfect organizer. The problem is you have 17 pairs of flip-flops. So making that part of life just a little bit easier, I fully believe, as women, helps us just in general. And I also think homemaking is not a dirty word. I think there is so much beauty in making a home. So much beauty in making our homes places of warmth and caring, putting out blankets and pillows and photos and treasures, and making our homes sanctuaries, places where we can go and be refueled, where our children can go and be refueled and connected back to us. Creating that safe haven helps us be better out in the world. I also wanted to mention here, a lot of times when I'm at home, I suddenly just feel like imbalanced. I feel like I have so much to do. I work from home, which I love and hate at the same time, because there's so much laundry and there's so much work, and there's so many things to get done. And a friend of mine shared this story with me one time that I thought was absolutely beautiful. Balance is not achievable at all. It's just not. Was that the message I was supposed to give? Balance is not achievable. Balance is a balancing act. It's a thing you continually do. It's not something that you achieve, a finish line you reach. Balance is like riding a bike. You're constantly shifting your weight from side to side, from left to right, one day or hour to the next, back and forth to keep from face planting, right? One day we're over here leaning a little more into our jobs, our careers. The next day, we gotta lean a little bit this way. Gotta lean a little bit more into family. And we go back and forth. And I think of my life this way. If I have a day or a couple of days where I'm traveling or have a lot going on with work, I try to lighten up the next couple of days. And it's just this constant dance, back and forth and back and forth. And I really believe once you start to embrace that dance that we're doing, it takes the pressure off a lot. It gives us a lot of grace to do life, to do all of life well, right? You don't have to achieve that. Oops. We're jumping. All right, we're here. So, action steps for this part. Spend time decluttering your house. I know it seems very tactical, but I promise you it makes a difference in life in general. Spend time not just in your home, but in your calendar, looking at what you're going to say yes and no to, Look at your shelves. What are you going to say yes and no to? Eliminate all of those distractions. And consider ways that you can make your home more restful, a place that serves you even better. And lastly, you are enough. Without realizing it, many of us have decided to let the world tell us what the good life looks like. And sister, sometimes we get off track. The perfectly constructed, magazine-worthy life does not equal happiness. Happiness isn't found in having the most accolades at work or perfectly behaved children. True joy isn't found in having it all together. The good life is rich and slow, real and flawed. Forget what the world is telling you. You don't have to constantly strive to be more. You are enough. You deserve simple, slow, and sweet. You are worthy of happiness. You deserve silly, extravagant joy, belly laughs, and rich memories worthy of being slowly retold in rocking chairs on front porches. This is attainable, right where you are, with exactly what you have. And I want to leave you with a quick story about a fisherman. If you follow me on Instagram, you read it last night, so pretend you're surprised. I read this last night. I don't know why I came across it last night of all nights. I'm glad I did, because I felt like this was something I needed to say as I exit this stage. It's a parable, so it's not an actual story, but it's just so good. A businessman goes to Mexico, to a coastal small town in Mexico, and he meets a fisherman, middle-aged fisherman, coming in with his boat. He has a couple good, large fish on the boat, and the businessman says, "Hey, those are good fish. Why isn't your boat full?" And he said, "I'll have enough. This is enough to feed my family. We're good. We sell a few, and then we have enough for us." And he said, "Oh, well, okay. What do you do with the rest of your time?" And he said, "Well, I go into town, and I sip a little wine, and I dance, and I come home, and I spend time with my kids, and I spend time with my wife and my grandkids." And he said, "Oh, but listen, I am a super successful businessman, and what you need to do is get a bigger boat so that you can get more fish, and then once you get a ton of fish, we'll use those fish to buy a bigger boat, and then we'll go to New York, and we'll do all these things with all these trade deals, and you will be a millionaire." And he was like, "Wow, how long is that going to take?" And he said, 25 years. And he was like, "Oh, okay. And then what?" And he said, "Well, then we'll grow it bigger and bigger and bigger." He said, "Well, then what?" And he said, "Then, after that, you can retire." He said, "Well, I do." He said, "Well, you'll come back here and you'll sip a little wine and dance and spend time with your kids and your grandkids." I just thought that story was beautiful, because I think one of the biggest things I can leave you with is that you get to define success. You get to define what it looks like to have reached your goal, to have made it. And sometimes your answer might look a little different than everyone else's. That's okay. You get to own it. Thanks for having me.